Fantastic. Well, it looks like we've got a good complement of people here today for today's webinar. For those who are just joining us, whether you're in the US, in Australia, New Zealand, or abroad, thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know it's a lot to attend a webinar during a busy workday, but this is going to be a great opportunity for us to showcase some great improvement towards the quote to cash life cycle. For those that haven't met me before, my name is Paul McNeil. I'm the VP and GM of payments here at ConnectWise. Being an MSP or TSP owner myself for many years and having the opportunity to work with many MSPs and TSPs over the past more than the past decade. It's been great to be able to be part of the ecosystem, more importantly, to be able to work very closely with ConnectWise in the early days, building out integrations, WiseSync and WisePay. We were acquired back in 2022, and that opportunity was to be able to bring our products into the ConnectWise ecosystem, beyond the ecosystem and into the integration of ConnectWise and part of the platform. And that's something that is very great to be able to be here today to think about how we can improve processes and, more importantly, create opportunities to simplify and streamline what we call the quote to cash life cycle. I'm joined today by Beck Payer. Beck, did you want to just maybe give yourself a bit of background and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. So my name's Beck. I have been lucky enough to be working across the MSP, TSP industry for around the last 12, almost 13 years now. And my passion has always been in financial processes and how we can improve them. So joined the WisePay team about 8 years ago and have had the opportunity to then see that grow. Prior to that, though, I was in an Australian MSP. So as a service delivery manager, just really seeing and experiencing what all of that's about really gave me a great grounding when I work with our partners across the world.
Fantastic. Thanks, Beck. And super early for you and myself and John here on the other side of the world as well. So thank you for taking the time out of your middle of the night to come and join us on this webinar. John White, if you'd like to take a few moments to introduce yourself.
Yeah, morning everyone, or afternoon everyone, wherever you may be. I'm John. I'm an experienced leader in payments and product innovation. I've got experience across fintech, startups, and enterprise. I'm currently in a senior director role for product management here at ConnectWise and WisePay. What gets me out of bed every day is delivering product that generates value. So I'm really excited to be here to take you through some of the foundations and some of the things we're doing, and the quote to cash initiative being one of those things. So I'm going to first of all talk about some of the things we're doing and some of the investments we're making in our product and platform.
Well, that's a great segue straight into that. So, John, why don't you just take us through, and one of the things that we often hear from partners is that companies that are acquired are often acquired to create efficiency, and efficiency usually is cost cutting and reduction of investment to maximize profitability. But it's quite the opposite here with the acquisition of WiseSync and WisePay, because payments is definitely a key part of the investment strategy for ConnectWise. Maybe take us through some of the things that ConnectWise is doing to build and bolster the product for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really comes down to we're actually investing heavily into our product, our platform, and our team. So it's really exciting, as you mentioned, for a post-acquisition initiative. But we truly want to be that world-leading solution provider to TSPs, like the people on this call, and to your customers as well. So this is where some of the investment's going. We're starting with strong foundations. So we're increasing our investment in platform resilience. As we grow and as you as TSPs grow, we always intend to be there with you. We also understand the importance of data security and privacy. So we make no apologies for investing here as a priority to protect you and your customers' data. We've also invested a lot in our product development teams, having recently made significant headcount increases. We're also making some significant hires in leadership roles, bringing years of payments and fintech experience with them. So it's really exciting. And moving on to providing a best-in-class user experience. That means a lot to me personally. We're bringing in some more human-centered design principles. So what this means is our product team are going to be spending more time with you in the field, in the real world, to solve the problems we're solving. We'll be using data and getting customer feedback to act on and continuously improve. We'll be bringing some thought leadership into the partner network. regarding payment and receivables best practices. So there's lots of things that we can bring as a product team to market to help you as TSBs operate your businesses more efficiently. And finally, it never really ends, but we're innovating for tomorrow. So we're continuously building features and products that matter most with a focus on hyper automation. So things that can make your life easier and hopefully make the businesses operate more efficiently and us to continue to provide that truly world-leading experiences. So I'm excited about this investment and where we can take it. And I'm excited to hand back to Paul, who's going to take you through some of the ideas and some of the initiatives that we're started with.
And fantastic. I really appreciate that, John. And more importantly, I think it resonates well. Part of, being the founder and owner of a company that was acquired, to be here over 15 months later after the acquisition and see the level of investment, the new people that are starting, and more importantly, the opportunity for us to build a product that continues the vision that I had, which was to create seamless payment experiences for customers. The reality is, if you get paid, you survive, and cash flow is the oxygen of business. I've said that many, many times before. Why don't we just take a moment? I'm going to launch a poll. So for those that are currently sitting in front of their computer, should see that pop up on your screen now. So just take a few moments. This gives us a bit of insight as to your current use case, what PSA you're using, what quoting product that you are using, and some more background there of whether you accept online payments. So accepting online payments is the collection of payment during the quote process. So that is, you send a quote to a customer, they accept that quote and are required at that point or have some method of making payment, whether that's credit card or bank account, whether it's through an automatic payment setup. So for instance, your TSP or MSP invoices, whether you're going through and processing that on a recurring basis. So quote to cash is really about the simplification of that process. And each time that you touch anything inside of your systems that relates to the collection of money, the handling or processing of invoices, it costs you a great amount of money. And the reason for that is because your time, your team members' time, your accounts payable, receivable, etc., all of the people that are part of that ecosystem inside of your business are there as a cost. And you don't make more money from the moment that you issue an invoice or collect payment. It's all costing you. It's reduction of profit. And that is an important part of the background of WiseSync and WisePay, was to create that efficiency in my business so that I would have the simplicity and the processes that supported those frameworks. So when we talk about this, it really came back to one key area. And Beck, you and I have been working together for over 8 years, and you came on board as a customer of ours probably more than that, but most likely 10 or more years ago.
Yeah, it was.
And I think it's important to maybe have a conversation around what some of these pain points are that the MSPs see. And I'm bringing up a slide here which talks about that life cycle of when we collect payments during the quote process and what that means currently for the creation of the records, as well as the process of managing payments. So maybe just let's walk through some of the pain points that partners feel.
Look, absolutely. But to be honest and upfront, I didn't always take payments.
That's actually not uncommon. So
it was just too hard, and it would slow the process down too far. So if I had a quote go out and the customer had accepted it, then I was running. I was on my way. But that did create pain further down the track. So what we're going to go through is the pain if I had done the proper process, but should also recognize that sometimes it just gets too hard.
Yep. And I think it's important to understand that this is the sequence of processes that a partner or accounts receivable person needs to go through to simplify, or sorry, not to simplify, to actually transact the amount of money that's received up front. Because when you're paying on a quote, you don't have an invoice, you don't have anything yet, you don't have the project, you don't have the service ticket, you don't have any of the service deliverable components, whether it's products or agreements or whatever it is that you need to tie to. So we changed that process as part of the sequence of events to create what we call a fully restricted down payment. And this is something that, being part of ConnectWise, gave us the opportunity to simplify that process. And you can see as this slide goes through the sequence of events here, we can see the process inside of this is order porter for ConnectWise CPQ. The acceptance of the quote, this is all part of the existing system, dives into then the sequence of processing a payment. Now, from that point forward, this, the entry of a payment is quite, whether it's you're using our product WisePay or using a competitor's product, they're all going to process it in some similar way. It's what happens after the event that matters, because every one of those steps that you had to take before, the creation and the conversion of the opportunity, the promotion of that to a project, a service, sales order, a ticket, etc., required a number of steps, these manual steps that needed to be completed. Whereas we now go into ConnectWise PSA, we're actually going to see the process that exists now with this new flow for WisePay. And WisePay has worked with the PSA team to design and develop the process flows that would support the sequence of events to remove up to 17 steps if you're looking at all the interaction points that form part of that process, whether it's chasing customers, interacting with systems. We've worked with companies as part of our Evolve peer groups to talk to them and say, would this work? How would this actually make life easier? And the simple thing that they said to us was, Paul, we don't take payments in our quotes today because it's too hard. Exactly what you just said, Beck. And the biggest issue that we saw was this. It was the creation of all of these process steps and the sequences to one key point. And that was, how do I accept payment for something that doesn't exist? How do I allocate it in my accounting system so that my CPA doesn't, yell at me for having an unreconciled bank account or unreconciled merchant services account? Because all of these prepayments, they don't have anywhere to go. The great thing with ConnectWise PSA is we have the concept of this down payment, and the down payment in itself is a part of process that helps us to simplify and streamline the collection of payments, the collection of upfront payments, and then secondly, the application of those payments to the invoices that will be generated in a future state. So down payments are a critical part of the way that you handle those payments. But the challenge was you could never use them because you didn't have the project or sales order or ticket created. So there's always, it was just back to front. And that's where we've actually solved that problem. So maybe we could just take a second there, Beck, of you just explaining what that might mean to businesses.
Absolutely. It's the difference between, from my perspective, actually taking money up front and not taking money up front, which was the challenge that I was describing to begin with. So from a business perspective, your sales team have done an incredible job. They have gone out, they have presented that quote to your customer. Maybe the customer wants to buy some new hardware. We've got some new laptops, some new servers, maybe not the servers, but new laptops and new equipment going out to the partner. And what could happen with this process is they would come back to the office and they'll go, yes, they signed the quote. And we'll go, okay, well, did you get money from them? No. Okay, well, we need to go and create an invoice and we need to send that out to the customer before we can actually convert. That quote would go out to the customer. That down payment invoice would go out to the customer. The customers had time to cool off. Maybe they're not as excited about purchasing it. It could take a couple of days for them to come back and actually make that payment. So that's taken a little bit more off when I'm actually going to be able to proceed. I get the money, then I go and order the stock. And unfortunately, sometimes that stock's already moved and I may not be able to get the same thing. So we've got a number of different challenges if we delay that front end piece. And if we skip that piece and we actually didn't ask for the money from the customer and we've gone and ordered the stock, then we've delivered the stock to the customer, we're creating a cash gap, Paul. Because what we've done is we've actually provided all of this, we've bought it ourselves, but we haven't yet been paid. And sometimes that customer's payment terms can stretch out from 30 to 60. I've heard stories of 90 or longer on a significant projects because that money wasn't taken up front as well. So some of the pieces that we have broken out in this process is actually removing some of those barriers. From this perspective, if we're actually following through on these pieces, what we're doing is ensuring that we have simplified that process. We now have a simple part. By the time me as a salesperson has got back into the office, we've got the money, we've created the down payment invoice, it's all reconciled in my accounting package if I'm using QuickBooks and Xero, and it's ready to sync if I'm using any other accounting package. I've made that really simple from a PSA perspective to make sure that I don't need to spend the time doing that. I can keep all of that margin that I've just made on that sale focused on actually making money for my business. I'm so excited about this solution, because for those who are watching, it really was a 14, 17 step process down to 3. And that's time that you can spend in your business doing things that make you money.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that we're not changing foundational process inside of ConnectWise PSA. The down payment process has existed for as long as I've used it. We use down payments heavily in our business, and this was actually something that I dreamt about around 10 years ago. And the challenge was it was just not possible. It wasn't possible to do that inside of the integrations, through the APIs that were available. But that's where you don't have the challenges like what you saw when you're part of ConnectWise. You know, we had to work with the PSA team to understand the process and the flows, but ultimately the outcome of there was to create an opportunity for us to simplify this process end to end. So if you do have questions, please go ahead and ask them in the Q&A. That's what it's there for. We are seeing questions come through, so we'll look to answer those as we move through. But as we think about the process here, it's really a straightforward process for our business to make this framework work for you. And some of the questions have been simply, well, what license of WisePay do I need for this to be functional? Well, we will be launching this product as part of both WisePay for PSA, which is available as early access, and we'll be able to share that with you in a moment as well. So I'm going to just share a further poll, which is the early access registration. So go ahead and please tell us if you'd like to be part of that early access registration. I might hand over to John for a moment for you to tell us a little bit more about that early access process and what that means to people looking to make use of this product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we've obviously tested in market and through Paul and Beck's direct experience. So we've drummed up a lot of excitement about it. And early access really means that we'd like to put it in front of a select group of partners to really get their direct feedback as well by using the service as well. So we're really excited to get that feedback, hear it from you directly, what impact it's had to your business, to really understand that we are building the right things, which really sets us up for our future directional roadmap as well.
So essentially, it allows us to turn this functionality on for you if you're using ConnectWise CPQ, WisePay for PSA. Early access is available today. What about the partners that are using WiseSync and WisePay, the cloud accounting integrations that are provided as part of the WiseSync and WisePay suite of products?
Yeah, that's right. We're starting with our WisePay for PSA products. So if you are using some of the accounting packages, such as QuickBooks Desktop, we can get ready straight away. And then probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll be looking to offer that to our cloud accounting packages as well, such as Xero and QuickBooks Online. Okay,
great. So QuickBooks Online and Xero are part of the WiseSync and WisePay product suite. So if you're using the native integration or a third-party integration to either one of those products, you would need to speak to your account manager about finding out more about WiseSync and WisePay. For those that haven't got WisePay for PSA, so WisePay for PSA, for those that aren't aware, provides the native integration for desktop accounting. So that is the QuickBooks desktop integration, is going to provide the capability for you to accept payments through the online payment link, through the ConnectWise customer portal, and of course, with the addition here of the quote to cash, the CPQ integration, amongst other integrations that are coming online and progressively being made available through WisePay for PSA. So the mechanisms in which that product works is that payments are applied against invoices in PSA, so in your the place where those invoices are generated. Those payment types are special. They're actually identified separately to other payments, whether it be check or ACH payments directly into your bank account, so that it gives the ability for those payments to be synced through our API to your cloud accounting system, to your external accounting systems. So if you are using a third-party integration, make sure you reach out to them and ask them if they're integrating to WisePay payments via the accounting API. So that's something that we launched earlier or later last year in 2023, was the ability for third-party integrators to expand their integration to provide the ability to sync those payments from the PSA back to your accounting system. So whether you're using Business Central, NetSuite, Sage Intacct, other products are coming online with those third-party integrations already being developed in the background there by those third-party integrators. So if you are currently using WiseSync and WisePay, as John mentioned, we will be bringing the CPQ early access in early to mid-February. We expect it to be available. If you are using the desktop accounting integration to QuickBooks Desktop, then you're going to have the ability to access that through the WisePay for PSA, essentially as early access today. We just need you to register, fill out that form if you haven't done so already, and the team will be able to link up with you after this event today and talk about what that means and make sure that you've got the process configured and ready. There is one very key thing, and that is you do need to be producing quotes, and you need to have the order porter forms that allow for online payments. So they're the accordion forms. If you've got heavily customized quote forms, then you would need to make sure that you've got the online payment components added to those forms, which can be done. But obviously, if you've deviated away from the actual standards, then they may not be there in those forms if you haven't already created them. So thanks to everyone for taking the time to complete those polls. It looks like we've got a number of people that are looking to register for early access and a bunch more that are looking for more information. So we'll be sure to reach out and have those conversations. So maybe we should sort of switch gears for a second, because there's a lot of questions here around why would we want to accept upfront payment? And Beck, you touched on it a little bit here, and understanding too, why would it be important for a business to have a payment requirement, whether it's 100% or a partial payment, especially when we're talking about hardware orders and commitments of service. So let's spin off into that direction just for a moment.
Absolutely. And if I can jump in with some of the MSP experience, there is nothing worse as being part of an MSP that is running out of cash. And you touched on before, cash is the oxygen of a business, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Canada, wherever you are in the world. If you don't have cash flow coming through your business, your business won't survive. It can sort of cope for a month, maybe a couple of months, but if you've got no cash flow coming through. So when we take that back and we look at the process of what some of the regular processes we're going through as business owners within our business, one of the big ones can actually be how we're receiving money for projects and hardware orders that we're taking through our business. If we have that money being delayed and creating a cash gap, we're starving a business of that oxygen, of that cash flow. Meaning, as a business owner, I can't make the decisions that I want to make for my business, for my staff, for the next direction that I want to take my business in. We want to ensure, from my perspective, that you're pulling back you're making sure that you keep that oxygen within your business so that you can be ready to take the next step, whatever those opportunities are as they come up for you. What do you think, Paul, from your experience?
I think it's critical. I think as businesses we downplay the as a bank you are not you're a technology service provider. I think that was a question. What is a TSP? I've never heard of this before. TSP, technology service provider, or teaspoon if you're in the kitchen. The objective here is to be able to provide services ongoing, and you're not your client's bank. And the moment that we shifted away from providing credit line services to our customers in our business was the moment that we shored up our cash flow. I've been in that business before where, I've been looking at my bank balance and thinking, how am I going to pay payroll? How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to continue to operate this business? And I know, Beck, you've been in those same challenges as a business manager, probably many times before too. The reality of the situation is clear. When customers are confirming with you that they want this service, product, or solution that you're proposing, the objectivity of asking for a payment, whether it's even just 50% upfront or the hardware cost, is not uncommon. Now, there may be certain circumstances of questions in here about FedRAMP and other questions around, large government contracts. Of course, they're going to have huge procurement processes, tenders, etc. That may not be appropriate to those types of scenarios, but the reality of the situation is most businesses will pay up front for most services if that's what's required of them. And I've seen that transition made in my own business. And I've seen other businesses make that transition too, where they're like, I'm at the point where I can't sustain this business any longer. I remember talking to a partner of ours at one point, and he was like, I wish this solution was available for us pre-COVID, because I had $200,000 worth of access points that I bought for a client, or ordered for a client. It took nearly 18 months for those access points to be supplied due to supply constraints. And when it finally came time to deliver those access points to the customer, they turned around and said, oh, we don't need those anymore. And he was left with, $200,000 worth of hardware that he had to find new homes for. Now that, contractually it could have been, hey, you've already ordered it, it's, you've committed, you have to pay, etc. But then that creates a challenge in managing that account. Then it's an issue with how, whether there's a loss of trust in that relationship at a business level. Whereas if they'd already paid for it, there'd be no question. It's like, oh, well, you've paid for it. Here they are. Like, what do you want? Put them up on the roof. Where do you want them? Like, you change the dynamic of that relationship by it no longer being about getting that money. And that's an important distinction, is that this is taking away a friction point for cash flow that ultimately you can then require of your partners to pay at the very start of that relationship. The commitment of funds before the services are provided is a show of good faith that they're going to continue to pay the invoice, not withhold payment because they're unhappy about the color of that cable or where you put that printer or whatever it might be, the trivial things that can sometimes be the challenges that are put in front of us. So when we think about a lot of the challenges that businesses face and the way in which we can improve the process, how is this configured? And the reality of it is, Beck, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Other than the requirement for you to have those templates.
Yeah, it really is. Ooh, it's changed again. With the integration, we've got other things to do. Everyone's busy in their businesses. So when we implemented and developed this solution, we really built within CPQ the WisePay options and how we configure into your quotes. As Paul touched on, you do need to make sure you've got the right templates in place. But with those templates coming through, you have the ability then to set that 100%, 50% payment markers within there. And reflecting back on the video that you shared with that process, it just changes the button down the bottom in your order porter. It's a different button. It's a very clear button for your customers, so there's no confusion. It's accept and pay.
Yeah.
So we've got that clear button there and that process going through. On the WisePay side, that integration is seamless. What we're pulling through with the WisePay pieces is a very clear match and process for receiving those payments. If you're already using WisePay, you're probably aware it just goes through. It just marks as paid, and if it wasn't successful, you're notified of that straight away as well. So just ensuring that the unsuccessful processes are also highlighted as much as the successful processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple of one question which I want to highlight here as part of that, a question about I'm using CPQ, PSA and WisePay for PSA, but I don't sync to an accounting product. Will this process still work for me? So they've got some manual process they use in the back end. Yes, it will, because we're actually integrating into PSA. We're not actually forcing you to use a specific accounting product. As long as the integration that you are using integrates with ConnectWise PSA, the down payment invoice we create is no different to any down payment invoice that you would create normally and manually through the process. It's just a special flag setting inside of the PSA that protects that down payment from allocation until you actually say this particular down payment applies to that particular project, sales order, ticket, whatever it is that you're restricting it to. So if you're familiar with down payments, you had to do that first before you actually could apply or create a down payment for it to be allocated against any one of those items. But you can't create a down payment without those items. So you need to have the conversion done, you need to have the project created, you need to restrict that down payment, and then you need to create the down payment. We're just creating the opportunity for the down payment to exist before all the things are done, and then allocated at the end so that you can start allocating that down payment to that project, sales order, ticket, or whatever it is that you want to allocate it to. So to answer the question there, it is something that is directly integrated inside of ConnectWise PSA. If you are using an integration to sync the data from your accounting, from the PSA to your accounting system, then you would need to speak to your integration provider to ask them about integrating to WisePay payments, the endpoint that's available for payment synchronization from PSA to your accounting system, just like the accounting records can be synced. So that's something that we recommend you speak to your accounting providers for. If you are using the native integration for Great Plains or the QuickBooks desktop integration through ConnectWise PSA, the sync, the button you press inside of the accounting interface, then WisePay payments can be configured to synchronize to those two products. If you're using any other products such as Sage, Intact, NetSuite, Business Central, the list goes on, then you would need to speak to the integration provider that you currently integrate with for those products. If you are using another quoting product, so if you're not using CPQ, if you're using Quota or Zementum or something other than that, again, speak to the company that you use for quoting and ask them to integrate to payments, because this is something that we have exposed for all companies that integrate to ConnectWise PSA. It's part of our open API, our ecosystem, to allow you to accept payments in exactly the same way that we've built it for CPQ. It's available today, excuse me, through CPQ because we're ConnectWise, we built it for us and we're releasing it, but we've also made it accessible to those other quoting products. So I can see there's a number of partners out there that are using those other products, whether it's the CPQ or Quota, IT Quota, QuoteWorks, etc. Log a support ticket with that company, ask them to integrate with WisePay payments, and that's something they can reach out to us through our Invent program and have a conversation about what that integration would look like. So from a practical perspective, I think that answers a number of questions there. If you would like to learn more about the integration, WisePay for PSA, in fact, the integration for WisePay for PSA is no cost. You just pay for the transactions that you process through it. So again, more than happy for you to reach out, register for early access. And even if you just fill out the form and say, I want more information, you can absolutely do that as part of that. We've got the selection of who's looking to register for open access through that earlier poll. So we'll make sure that we get in contact with you. Question there about access to a recording. Yes, this is recorded and we will share that. Not a problem at all. And some other questions that we're just looking through the list here. Will the down payment invoice the full amount due showing a balance due at a later date or just the down payment? So the quote is your nomination. So you nominate how much you want to pay up front, whether it's 50%, 100%. Any amount collected from a quote is a prepayment. It's a down payment towards a future invoice. So that's up to you to decide. You can say all of the upfront component needs to be paid, so all the hardware that you might be supplying, and maybe that payout has a recurring element to it, might be an office subscription or whatever it is that you're providing under service and subscriptions. That would be the benefit there is paying through that flow would then capture the payment method and allow that payment method to be charged on an ongoing basis through the agreement billing processes that get set up after the project or services are provided as well. So the down payment invoice can be as much or as little as you want. My recommendation, 100% is the best way. But, of course, you can start to the level of comfort that you have as part of that as well. Moving into, is this available currently using Connect Booster? How is it better? You won't have this available to you using Connect Booster. This is an internal integration for WisePay for PSA, or sorry, WisePay product. It's something that we've worked with the PSA team to actually implement. So this is an internal system. The process that we've just gone through will be proprietary to WisePay. And that is obviously, if you're using our products for payments, then you get full access to that capability as well. For those that are using competitive products, make sure you reach out, because we do have a switch campaign running at the moment, which allows you to cover the cost of switching, which is fantastic if you're looking to shift from another company to WisePay. So reach out to us. Again, register for early access. Even if you're not a WisePay for PSA or WisePay customer, you can absolutely get access to that capability. Lots of questions still coming through. Can WisePay be used for customers to pay non-quote related invoices? Yes, that is exactly the product. It's a click to pay on an invoice. There's integrated with the ConnectWise customer portal. There's a variety of different places. The way that we built WisePay over 8 years ago now was to allow all roads lead to Rome. Every place where you interact with a customer, we wanted the ability for someone to click to pay to move through a payment flow. So whether that's an invoice that's sent from the PSA, whether it's a quote that's sent through your quoting product, whether it's the customer portal that they log into with access via third parties as well, or even other integrations that we've built that allow capabilities to extend just beyond the click to pay. Beck.
Well, you're also touched just slightly about one of my actual favorite features of the WisePay to CPQ integration that's available right now. It's not early access, it's always been there, is the fact that when you have recurring components on your quote within CPQ and a customer accepts it, we can actually draw that customer to save those bank account and credit card details on the spot when they're accepting those pieces, just like I would with my my Disney Plus or my subscription, my streaming subscription pieces. I've got those credit cards and bank account details up front, so that my recurring invoices, my agreement invoices, can be paid automatically through WisePay. And again, another friction piece that we just removed, but that piece is already, that's not early access. That's been there for a while, but it is 100% my favorite, because one of the hardest pieces we solved a while ago with WisePay was that point where we signed a customer up for recurring managed services, and then as part of the onboarding, we needed to go back out and then ask for their credit card or their bank account so that I knew I'd be paid on the first. With WisePay's integration into CPQ, we're actually capturing that information at the start of that relationship with our customers. And that to me is still one of those really easy ways to actually add value to our customer relationship, because we've just cleared that piece. And I can talk about the value of automatic payments all day. We might need a separate webinar for that, but absolutely ensuring that our customers can pay us as easily and as simply as possible is what WisePay is all about.
Fantastic. And it's something that I think is important. We just continue to resonate. The process here is getting paid shouldn't be a job you have to do. Accounts receivable is a cost burden to every business, and it's actually an inverse cost efficiency for your business as you grow. The more invoices you generate, the more work you need to do in managing your accounts receivable. Whereas automation, automatic payments, the processes that you can embed into your business can take away that effort. So much so that we've seen businesses that have had entire AR teams that have been able to be redeployed to other parts of the business, because they're no longer doing the AR function, because ultimately their work is done as part of the billing sequence rather than it being after the event. As a business owner, when I made that shift towards auto pay, we had 0% auto pay, and that was the time when my cash flow was the tightest it had ever been. When I made the decision to shift towards requiring my clients to pay for those services that were under contract, on agreement, and recurring, it was really quite straightforward. I just said, look, these are the costs associated with me providing this service to you. These occur every month, irrespective of what you consume, ultimately internet connections and other things. We just need you to pay this via direct debit from a bank account or credit card. And that process of shifting towards that meant by the time my MSP was acquired in 2016, we had 96% of our recurring revenue billed on the first day of the month and deposited in our bank account by the fourth day. So my cash flow was already, it was positive because I knew that I had all the money that I needed for payroll, rent, everything that ultimately my business was accountable for. That gave me as a business owner the ability to focus on the future and the direction that we were looking for.
Paul, just touching on that, because it is actually a barrier, and I know it's sort of touched on a couple of questions, but when you went out to your customers and presented that this was the movement that you were making, what was the reaction? I know many businesses, before they start to reach out to their customers, are like, oh no, my customers won't agree to that, or I'm worried about the reaction or the relationship I have with my customers. I'm sure you had those concerns, but what actually happened?
Well, I think it first started with my mindset shift towards this is just the way we will do business. In fact, I took payment terms off my quote template, and the agreement and the master service agreement said that payment will be made by direct debit from a bank account or credit card. That was the first step that I made. The second step was the conversation with customers during that renewal process that we require payment upfront on the monthly invoice when it's issued. And, most customers like, oh, okay. It was a request. It wasn't a, would you like to, could you possibly, it was, this is the way we're doing business. And because, ultimately we had a great service, clients loved us. Our services were what they liked. The concept of not paying for the services that you provide it's an erosion of trust. You can't not pay your staff to work with you. And we are one of them. We're part of that, an extension of the service that they provide to their customers. The IT is a critical part of that. So once I changed my mindset, it became really quite straightforward because the expectation was embedded. It wasn't a request for payment or the ask nicely model. It was just, this is the way we're doing business. There was some resistance for some larger clients. Like we had clients that were, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. Those larger clients had to go through a procurement process. They had to get multiple people to agree to the direct debit occurring. But ultimately, in some cases, we had 5-year contracts with some of those large companies for telephony products and services that we provided. So it was really quite straightforward to say, here's what we're committing to today for 5 years. This is the amount that you'll be charged for the hardware that we're providing to you. That needs to be direct debited. And it's not going to change because that was a fixed component. So that was one of the ways that we approached it. We started the process of, if someone resisted, well, let's put your contract services on. The ad hoc services that we bill separate, we can do that as it is today. And what we found through that process was once they were on auto pay, it became so simple. They're like, can you just do the rest of them? Because I just don't want to have the confusion of which ones are auto pay and which ones are not. We just want them all to be auto pay. And then that became a simple flip of the switch in the company finance settings. Billing terms are, first of the month by auto pay. And then that automatically sets the billing terms on the invoice in ConnectWise PSA and then bills the payment method that's saved on file for an invoice that's generated. For some of those customers, we actually had a separate term set up for 7 days. So for service invoices, we give them 7 days to review the invoice and tell us if there's any questions or concerns before we charged it. Because dealing with credits is something we wanted to avoid as well, because credits take time, confusion, etc. So we just simplified that process by creating a separate billing term. And that's one of the reasons why we built WisePay to work off the terms of an invoice, because you've got full control to the invoice level. Where a lot of other systems out there might do billing off an agreement type or have a whole bunch of parameters, whereas we just make it quite simple. It's like this invoice is paid by this payment method for this amount, which is the amount of the invoice. Really simple and easy to configure. More importantly, easy to administer, which is a key part of that. I think we've got a few more questions sort of flowing through here. Do you integrate with other products like Sage 50 Cloud Accounting Edition? I think we've already answered that. If you're using a third-party integration, you will need to speak to that integrator to provide that. The native integrations that we do have support for, which will be the ones supported moving forward, are the desktop QuickBooks desktop integration and also the Great Plains integration that's provided from native integrations. If you have QuickBooks Online or Xero Cloud Accounting, you do need to be using the WiseSync and WisePay product to get the capabilities of WisePay because of the nature of the integration components that work. If you are using a third-party product that doesn't integrate with payments, speak to them about building out that integration. The API is available for all integrators to use, especially for those capabilities to be unlocked inside of that product. Another product is it an add-on product or included in the product? If we're talking about WisePay and Sync and WisePay products, it is early access, so you'll be able to get access to it. It's a feature that can be turned on. It's included in your licensing. There's no additional cost for that capability to be unlocked. We're just starting to provide it through that early access program. We did actually show you a quick demo during the early part of the process. So if you blinked and missed it, the process exists inside of the quote flow and then the payment steps as part of it. So we will share a link to a recording, which you can watch at your own leisure. Some people said that it was a little bit low quality, a bit blurry, not something I can control here, but we will provide a link in the follow-up communication and recording so you can watch the full resolution walkthrough of that process as well. In terms of the next question here, agreement quotes, is there a KB instructions how to configure it to default recurring transactions? It's actually a setting when you set up your quote. It's all part of the university. You just select the option to collect recurring from Order Porter, and it will require the customer to save a bank account or credit card as part of their checkout flow. So ultimately, just saving a bank account or credit card is all that's required. The rest of it's done inside of ConnectWise PSA with the creation of agreements and the billing term configuration as part of that. The similar sort of aligned to that one is, do they get to choose? It's all defined inside of your quote. You set up the quote parameters, how much to collect and whether recurring is collected. Once you set those parameters in the quote, then the customer has the options available to them based on those configurations that you have set. Another one here, we collect upfront before we start services. How does the client see the payment link in the Order Porter? It's actually exactly that. It's a button, approve and pay. So when they click approve and pay, it will actually go through that process. I might just flip back to I've just lost my screen. Click start again. Let me just show you that for those that are looking for the process here. So I'll just jump to the section where we go through it. So here is Order Porter.
Oh, the screen's not quite updated.
Oh, sorry, it's coming through now. Got it, perfect. So here is the quote in Order Porter. You'll notice there that the option here to accept the conditions, email address and purchase order number. When they put in their electronic signature, they have the option there to approve and pay. So this, oh gosh, sorry, that did not work. Let me just hit pause on that when we get to that screen. Here is the payment flow. So in this particular case, the requirement was for the customer to pay $10,116.64, which was 10% of the total quote. That was set up in Order Porter and the quote configuration for the collection of payment. As we walk through the payment process, so in this case, the user is registering, either logging in or registering at that point in time. And a question that's been asked, can the credit card fee be added? You can see there that there was actually the option to pass through the fee. You can see we've got credit card surcharging set. It's nominated as a cash discount removal. So for those that are in the US, the cash discount removal, all prices are cash unless you pay by card, in which case the discount is removed. The 3% is added at the time of checkout. So we will actually see a separate invoice generated for the cash discount removal because that's a service already rendered. It doesn't go into the down payment amount because that goes into the future allocation of the invoice to be created. Paying by bank debit, obviously there's no fee pass through. That's considered a cash payment. So you can't collect any fees associated with ACH, obviously if you're going to pass through the cost of the credit card transaction. You can see there that keep clicking and it goes away. You'll see there that the total amount, the cash discount removal, has been added to the total amount charged. So it grosses up the total amount that gets charged to the credit card saved on file. Acceptance of the payment terms when collected. And then ultimately, this is where it kicks over into the PSA for you to see how the process works. So if I just play this and let it run, you'll see that the option here to restrict a project that's been created post-conversion. So the down payment's already been generated, the payment's already been taken, and it's potentially already synced through to your accounting system. Checking that box to restrict the down payment to the project will mean that when we go to the down payment invoice, you'll see that it does not have a apply to set. So this is something that you cannot do. When you create a down payment, you must set the restriction at that point in time. And this is one of the biggest, this is the change that was made through the integration with PSA and WisePay to facilitate the creation of that down payment with no restriction applied. Now, the no restriction would normally mean that it's available to anything. It could be an agreement, a service ticket, anywhere can allocate that. But what we've actually done is we've restricted it to everything. So nothing can touch it until you come in and do this next step. You'll see at the top of the invoice screen there's an apply to button now, which will appear, or it has already appeared in your PSA. When you click on that apply to button, it will then unlock that field so that you can select the project, sales order, service ticket, etc., to restrict that down payment to. So once you apply the restriction, it then unlocks that down payment to allocate against future invoices that are to be generated for the project or service ticket that's applied. So ultimately, it's like a gift card that you put in the drawer and never use until you go to use that gift card. It's exactly the same approach. It's locked away in a drawer. No one can touch it until you say, this is what this money is for. And changing that process means that we can take all the money up front with confidence, knowing that nothing else is going to allocate to it until you decide whether you're going to a sales order to invoice, or you're going to a project or a service ticket, because that decision could also reflect or change where you want the down payment to be allocated to, which can sometimes cause further problems if you've set it at the front and you've then realized much later down the track that, oh no, you wanted it in a project, not in a service ticket. And those types of things can create a bit of a challenge to manage. So we've really simplified and streamlined that. As I said, some of our Evolve partners had acknowledged this would probably save about 17 steps, because the number of things they have to do to get to this same point is completely removed. They're no longer required to, most cases people just don't accept payment because it's just too difficult. It's too hard. It's easy for me just to get them to accept the quote. We convert it. We create the project, we create the down payment, we send the down payment, we allocate the payment, we have to send multiple reminders for the customer to pay, etc., so on and so forth. So there's a lot of steps that have been removed by simply just saying, pay it here and then restrict at a later stage. And that gives you full confidence in process. Beck, did you have something to add to that?
Just jumping in with the other questions was just confirming this invoice was automatically created by WisePay in the PSA.
Yes.
You haven't needed to manually remember the amount that the customer paid and correct that correctly. We did that automatically at the point where they successfully processed a payment as part of that order porter acceptance. And just really highlighting that you're not touching it. It's being done for you.
Yeah, and that's what, going back to the point too of that, this is in the PSA. So, whether you are using an integration or not, your invoices that are generated in the PSA is the place in which this occurs. So you don't have to go into a third-party system. You don't have to come into WisePay. It's all driven by that. There is one question that's really actually a great question, is what if they don't pay? Do you send a reminder about the quote in that particular process? Well, the good news is it's pay and approve. So the quote is only approved once they've paid. So in order for it to be marked as paid, they have to go through that process to make payment before the quote is considered approved. So in fact, we've actually made sure that the quote won't move to an approved state until they've completed that payment flow. And that's something that, again, working very closely with the PSA team to make sure that someone can't click the button and abandon the cart and you've already kicked off the work process, but they actually haven't made payment. So to answer that question, it is triggered. The approval is triggered as part of the completion of the payment. There's a verification step in the back end to make sure that the quote is in fact paid. Are there credit card discount fees customizable? Yes, they are. The 3% is different for merchant account processing, yes, it is, dependent on your fee rates and cards. So you can set it. We do say that you're obviously not there to make profit from the collection of payments from card payments. In fact, some jurisdictions completely prohibit the profiteering of that approach, but the objective is to pass through the costs. So, whether 3% or whatever it is, you can set that, define it, and even the label is configurable as well. So if you don't want it to be cash discount removal, if you wanted it to be, I don't know, reward point accumulation fee or something, you can set it to whatever you want it to be. But, just in reality, it's there to provide a convenience, not specifically for you to profit from. How is the invoice generated? Answer that one as well. It's automatically generated. There's a few settings inside of WisePay for PSA to define how those invoices are created, such as the item to use for the surcharge when a surcharge is created. So the entire process is automated for collection, which I think is an important part of the overall process. Looks like we've got a bunch of other questions that maybe we will be able to answer. So is data flowing outside of the USA? We are an Australian company, so WiseSync and WisePay is based in Australia. So which I know we fall under a number of Five Eyes intelligence schemes. So, we do have customers that have gone through the process of review with us. If you are a federal government contractor, then you may be restricted in that case, but that's something that I really can't advise on in this particular forum. If you're looking at integrations with other third-party products, again, please make sure you reach out to them, have a conversation about taking payment through WisePay, get them to reach out through the Invent program if they'd like some more information. So that would be invent@connectwise.com. And that's pretty much everything that's a wrap. So, really grateful for everyone to take the time out of your day. John, thank you for your time, as well as Beck. I know it's super early for you there in Adelaide and for us here in Melbourne, but really grateful for the time that you've taken to come online.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you to everyone, and have a great rest of your day.